My sister has always dreamed of getting rich overnight. Driven by her ambition, she orchestrated a deliberate accident, seriously injuring the grandson of the Kramer family from New York. A steel bar pierced the child's chest. She acted like a good Samaritan, rushing him to the hospital, and even donating 800 cubic centimeters of her blood. She appeared selfless, doing a good deed without leaving her name. Yet, as soon as the child was out of danger, she quickly left the hospital, hoping her act of kindness would lead to an even greater reward. Not only did I fail to stop her, but I stood watch in the corridor, ensuring she wouldn't be caught. In my previous life, I had seen her scheming on the construction site. I tried to dissuade her out of kindness, warning her that we couldn't afford to provoke the powerful Kramer family. She pretended to listen, and even praised me for being sensible. But on our way back, she detoured to the construction site and pushed me off the roof of the steel plant. Steel bars pierced my body, and I died with my eyes wide open, full of regret. She pinned the blame on me, accusing me of ruining her chance to get rich. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day of the accident. This time, I'm going to let her dig her own grave. The Kramer family's grandson was undergoing emergency treatment in the operating room. Julia Reed, my sister, stood by the window, transfusing blood to save the child. Her delicate face was filled with feigned concern, and her beautiful dress was smeared with blood. To anyone watching, she looked like a selfless savior, not the mastermind behind the accident. After the nurse drew her blood, Julia pressed on anxiously. "Is that enough? If not, take more. I can give as much as needed. The child is so young, you have to save him. Otherwise, I'll never be at peace for the rest of my life." The nurse, impressed by her apparent beauty and kindness, reassured her that the child didn't need any more blood, and that what she'd given was more than sufficient. Julia pretended to be deeply grateful, bowing to thank her. When asked for her name, she skillfully changed the subject. It was all part of her plan. Her details were already on the blood transfusion receipt. She wanted to appear as someone who saved a life without seeking a reward, knowing this would compel the wealthy Kramer family to give her even more. After all, money was the one thing the Kramer family never lacked. As soon as the nurse disappeared into the operating room, Julia dropped her act. She grabbed my arm tightly, making me wince in pain. "From now on, keep your mouth shut. You know what to say and what not to say," she hissed. "We're in this together. If the Kramer family finds out what I've done, you won't escape either." She expected me to object, like I had in the past. But this time, I simply let her hand go and smiled. "Don't worry, you're my sister. Who else would I support if not you? When the Kramer family rewards you, open your company. Just give me a front desk job to make a living." Julia looked at me with satisfaction, snorting as she wiped the blood off her hands. "What our parents said is true. You're useless. You'll spend your whole life working for others. If you don't rely on me, you'll never live in a decent house, no matter how hard you work." I nodded meekly, pretending to be timid and afraid. In my previous life, my resistance had led to my gruesome death. But this time I had a different plan. Not only would I refrain from stopping her, but I would even lend her a hand. I wanted to watch her destruction unfold after crossing the Kramer family. Julia, oblivious to my thoughts, smirked at my expression. "Stop pretending. Just looking at you makes me angry. When I open my company, I'll make you my secretary. I'll even find you a driver. That should be enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life." With that, she dragged me to the elevator. Sure enough, when we stepped out, we came face to face with Albert Kramer, the prince of the New York elite. She glared at me with fierce intensity. Panicking, I quickly used the excuse of a stomachache and slipped into the bathroom. What a joke. Now I'm entangled in her scheme. When her trick gets exposed, won't I be dragged down with her? Moments later, I heard my sister's sweet, practiced laugh echoing down the corridor. "No need to thank me. Saving lives is the right thing to do. The child is only 5 years old. I couldn't just turn a blind eye. I was just lending a hand. I don't expect any kind of reward. I actually have other matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now." When the assistant tried to offer her a bank card as thanks, she made a hasty exit. However, she deliberately left behind a business card with her contact information. I stepped out of the bathroom and hid at the end of the corridor, debating whether I should just run away. But before I could act, I overheard Albert's conversation with his assistant. "Find out if this incident was truly an accident or premeditated. Don't involve the police. I'll handle this personally. If anyone dared to harm my son, I have countless ways to make them regret it. Investigate everyone at the factory who was present when it happened. Check the broken steel bars. I want to know if they are poorly secured. Let's see what's tougher, the steel bars or the culprit's life." The assistant nodded repeatedly in agreement. As Albert glanced at the business card left by Julia, I hesitated, bracing myself for his next move. "And about this Julia? Don't worry about her for now. Let's see how my son is doing. I'll deal with her when he wakes up." After Albert and his group entered the elevator, I finally let out a shaky sigh of relief. The Kramer family wields incredible power in New York. Julia dared to mess with their heir. It seems her future is bound to be miserable. Once I left the hospital, I noticed that Julia's car was gone. I tried calling her, but no one picked up. With no other choice, I flagged down a taxi and headed home. As soon as I stepped through the door, my father hurled an ashtray at my head. Blood began trickling down instantly. My mother's scolding followed right after. "Alice, can't you show some ambition for once? You're absolutely hopeless. Your father has worked tirelessly on construction sites for years. Meeting Mr. Kramer with his son on an inspection is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. If you won't help your sister, at least don't sabotage her." My father slapped the open wound on my forehead, and I winced in pain. "Julia told you to leave the hospital immediately. Are you deaf? Or are you trying to steal her credit for saving that child? How could I have raised such a useless child? If Mr. Kramer finds you, how will we pull off the rest of this plan? How can we even ask for compensation? You're an absolute fool." So they knew this was extortion all along. Not only that, but they fully supported Julia's malicious plan. In my previous life, they had blamed me for ruining her scheme and hadn't even bothered to collect my body. I no longer cared about keeping up appearances with them. Steal her credit for saving someone or take the fall for her nearly killing someone. I don't have the stomach for either. Everything about this is rotten to the core. My father, enraged, raised his hand to hit me again. But Julia, who had returned home early, intervened. Don't waste your energy on her. She's just a useless piece of trash who can't be counted on for anything. It's a good thing I thought ahead and left a business card before leaving the hospital. At her words, my mother's angry scowl melted into a beaming smile. Julia, you've always been smart. I've said it since you were a child. You're destined for greatness. Unlike someone else here, who's more trouble than they're worth. A lazy donkey, 20 years of raising her, and she's been nothing but a financial drain. Too tired to argue, I retreated to my room and grabbed some tissues to stop the bleeding from my wound. In the living room, Julia was still animatedly recounting her version of the events, basking in their praise. When I heard about the child falling, I couldn't hold back a sneer. Don't underestimate Mr. Kramer's intelligence just because you lack it. What do you mean by falling? Do you think you can bury your dirty deeds under a shallow excuse like that? What about the steel bar's hardness? Do you really believe it would break so conveniently? And that it just happened to hit the child? Fool others if you must, but don't fool yourself. My parents' expressions shifted, and they rushed into my room, visibly agitated. One of them slapped me hard across the face. I knew you were useless. Keep those opinions to yourself from now on. If you dare to ruin your sister's plans, I'll break your legs myself. Remember, this accident was nothing but an accident. Your sister saved Mr. Kramer's son out of kindness. It's only fair for the Kramer family to reward us. And if they don't, they're the ones being heartless. I covered my stinging cheek and let out a dry laugh, their shamelessness making my stomach turn. So, I'm useless for trying to earn money honestly, but if I don't resort to blackmail like her, I'm worthless. If making money means going against my conscience, I'd rather starve to death in poverty. My father's face turned crimson with fury. He grabbed the broken ashtray earlier and hurled it at my head again. For a fleeting moment, panic crossed both my parents' faces. But before they could lash out again, Julia interjected smugly. Don't waste your breath on her. She's doomed to stay poor her whole life. When we were at the hospital, she was already groveling, saying I should hire her as a receptionist once my company opens. What else can a useless person like her say? And did you notice Mr. Kramer's look today? It wasn't ordinary. His wife passed away years ago. If he contacts me in the next few days, I might just catch his eye. If that happens, forget millions. I'll be set for life. My parents burst into laughter, practically doubling over in delight. They lavished Julia with praise, calling her their pride. But only I noticed the truth. The way Albert looked at her was not admiration but suspicion. If Julia dared to cross the Kramer family, even 10 lives wouldn't save her. Ignoring reality, my parents continued singing Julia's praises. They fetched the health supplements they had prepared in advance to help her recover from her heroic efforts. Not once did their eyes flicker toward me. I stood silently, watching the scene unfold, determined not to engage further. My priority was clear. I needed to sever ties with these people to protect myself. Even as my lips curled into a mocking smile, my words cut deep. It's disgusting how you turn a blind eye to greed and deceit. Do you even realize what you're setting yourselves up for? As expected, my parents' mood soured instantly. Get out! My father roared, veins bulging with fury. He grabbed the household registry, tore out the page with my name, and flung it at me. I don't want a worthless daughter like you under my roof. Pack your things and leave. My mother joined in, her disappointment etched deep in her face. Julia, scrolling on her phone, didn't even look up. With a scoff, she added, I was going to offer you a job once my company was running. But since you clearly despise me so much, don't come crawling back to me later when you're unemployed. My goal was accomplished. Smirking, I bent down to pick up the torn page. One day, you'll realize just how dangerous it is to meddle with the Kramer family. When that day comes, we'll see who ends up on their knees, begging for mercy. With that, I left the house, heading straight for the nearest pharmacy. The clerk's eyes widened at the sight of my bloodied head. She looked hesitant as she handed me the medicine, her voice trembling. Miss, you should really go to the hospital for this. Before I could leave the pharmacy, the infection from my wound caused me to faint, collapsing right there on the ground. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in a hospital ward. A nurse was quietly changing my dressing, seemingly unaware that I had woken up. She chatted openly with her colleague, their conversation floating through the room without restraint. Did you hear about the boy staying downstairs? He's apparently the grandson of the Kramer family. He's in critical condition and Mr. Kramer is beside himself with worry. He even called in a team of international experts overnight to consult on the case. How could such a young child get injured so badly? Could it be some sort of malicious revenge tied to business competition? Who knows? Mr. Kramer's wife passed away years ago, and this boy is his only child. He treats him like everything he does. Whoever dared to harm him must have a death wish. The boy's condition is still precarious. The bodyguards stationed outside his ward don't look like your typical security detail. Stop talking. We don't want to get into trouble. Those bodyguards are probably mercenaries, not amateurs. Once they finished changing the dressing, the nurses left the room, but their words sent a chill through me. The Kramer family was far more complex and dangerous than I had imagined. Julia's fate was sealed. Without wasting another moment, I hurriedly made arrangements to discharge myself from the hospital. But as I stepped into the hallway, I ran into Mr. Kramer's assistant. His face was etched with worry as he hurriedly questioned passers-by about their blood types. The boy's wound is badly infected, and he's losing blood fast, he explained. The hospital's blood bank doesn't have enough in stock. For a moment, I hesitated, then gritted my teeth and stepped forward. I can help, I said. This was my attempt to atone for Julia's sins. The situation was urgent, so the hospital fast-tracked my paperwork. There was no time for formalities or even a receipt for the blood transfusion. They whisked me into the procedure room immediately. After the transfusion, I overheard that the boy's condition had stabilized. Relieved, I quietly removed the 4 needle and slipped out of the hospital without leaving any personal information.